Hi guys, welcome back, and in this video I will show you the source code for this simple support and resistance indicator. So let's get to it. I will open my MT5 editor that is right here, and this is the source code that I am showing you, and as you can see it's already done. So what I will do is that I will go through this code and I will explain what does each part do. Okay, so let's start at the top. You can see that there are some input variables, and let's start with the first one, which is called peaks collect. The second one is called peaks pool, and the second one is called deviation points. So for the first input, when you are trying to find support and resistance zones, you have to have like some data in order to be able to find those peaks. And when you are searching for these zones, you need highs and lows. So if I go back to my MT5 platform, and here on my chart you can see these arrows right here, and these arrows represent the highs and lows that I have found on over some time period. So you can see that the first arrow is right here. So I am analyzing the chart since this point to the current time, and yeah, so this input basically tells me how many data points I want to include in the search for support and resistance zones. As I go with higher number, there will be more support and resistance zones. So if at this point it's 10, so if I change it to something like 50, you will be able to see that it got really messy, because now I am searching for 50 lows and 50 highs. So that's what you get. So we don't want that. So I will change that back to like something like 15, for example. And yeah, let's continue. The next input here is called peaks pool. So this is also very simple. If you check here, you can see that there's some distance between each of these highs right here and each of these lows. And peaks pool is like an peaks pool means okay, how to explain it? Okay, so let's say that in this case the peaks pool is 40. So if I start here and I choose 40 candlesticks, okay, I am starting right here. So here is this point is where I start the search for highs and lows, and I go back 40 candlesticks right here, and this is my so-called pool of candlesticks. And inside this pool I look for the highest point and for the lowest point. And if you can see clearly, you can see that there are two arrows, one in the highest point and one in the lowest point. Okay, and then if I go another 40 candlesticks back, but from this point I am here, and then you can also see that there are two arrows, one for the highest point and one for the lowest point. And if I do the same thing, so 40 candlestick back, I am here, you can see that the same thing happens. So if I change this period to something like 100, you will be able to see that the arrows will be further from each other. Okay, because now I am looking for the high and low every 100 candlesticks. So I'm starting here. I go back, so this is my first pool, and you can see that there are arrows at the highest and lowest point, and the same thing is right here. 100 candlesticks, and you can see that there's a row lowest point and highest point right here. So that's what this input does. And then there's the last input called the deviation point, and this is very simple. Basically, when we are searching for the support and resistance, it won't be at the same price level. Okay, so there's going to be some deviation between this high and this high. We would call this like a resistance zone, but if you check it, there are two different price levels. They are close to each other, but they are different, and that's where we use this deviation points. So we say that if two highs or two lows are from each other in this deviation points distance, then we want to use it as either support or a resistance zone. So that's what happens. So if I go to 100 time frame, 1 hour time frame, and right now it's set to 55 points, so you can see how thick this zone is. If I changed it to something like 150, it will become much more thicker, like this. Okay, so that's what this does. And if I just want very precise zones, then I can change it to something like 20, and you can see that these are pretty precise right here. Okay, so these are the inputs that we are using. Moving on, here are just some arrays initializations, so that's pretty self-explanatory. And here are our arrays. So here is an array for our tops, for our highs, for our lows, and the data array represents highs and lows combined together. So yeah, so like in this data array there are highs and lows as well. And then we have this times array. This times array is for storing the time of each high or low, because it's a great way of identifying the highs and lows, because it can happen, it's very rare, but it can happen that, for example, two highs have the exact price level, and then we don't know which one is which. But if we can identify them by their time when they occurred, then we can with certainty tell which is which. So that's why I am using this times array as well. And then there's the last array called use times, and I will explain it later in this code. So I am here on my onCalculate function, and you can see that I am not creating a for loop for iterating through all of the available data points, because I just want to calculate my support and resistance zone for the current market. Therefore, I'm not interested whether there's like some support zone right here that I don't know about. That's not my interest. So yeah, so the first for loop that you can see here looks like this, and basically it collects data. So in order to find support and resistance zones, I need those highs and lows, and this is the for loop that finds me those highs and lows, and then it stores them. So in this tops array I have my highs, in this lows array I have my lows and then I also add so this is like when we want to work with dynamic arrays. So if we don't know the exact size of the array before we use the array, we can use something like this, and it's like a dynamic array. So that's what we are doing here, and we are just simply storing these highs and lows values into the data array. And then we do the same thing for the times array, where we also dynamically increase the size of this array, and then we assign the time for the for the high and for the low. So that's all we need right here. Then I'm just creating the arrows, as you can see right here on my chart. So that happens all in this part, and also, okay, I can show it to you. Also, I have added like for me to see those pools. So here you can see from which periods I am taking the highs and lows. So yeah, so that's what this part of the code was for, but as it gets pretty messy on the chart, I decided not to use it in the final version. But if you wish to use it, you can just uncomment this and it will work just fine. And so this is our first part of the code. So this is like let's call it data collection loop, okay? And then there's our second loop, which is like let's call it support and resistance loop. Sorry, not loop, but loop. And in this for loop, we are searching for our resistance and support zones. Okay, so let's check what happens here. So there's our first for loop, and you can see that we are looping through all of the values of the data array. So we are like looping through each high and low, and right after that we create another for loop. So there's this nested for loop, and we do exactly the same thing. Why am I doing this? If you can visualize it. So let's get back to my screen and let's visualize what's happening. So in the first for loop, we are getting the first data point. Okay, so this is our first data point right here. And then if we go back to the code and we check what's happening there, then we create another for loop, as I said before, and we are iterating through all of the other values, and then we are checking if any of the other values is close to our initial value. So this is our first value, and then we check if this value is close. It's not. Then we check if this value is close. It's not. Then we check if this or this or this, it, and so on and so on. We do it for all of our values, and for each of them we check if they are close to our first value. If they are, we will create this support or a resistance zone, and if they are not, we don't create anything. So this is our first iteration. On the second iteration, okay, On the second iteration, what it does is that it takes the second value and it does exactly the same thing. So then we check whether the first value is close to the first, to the next one, next one, next one, next one, next one, next one. And the principle is exactly the same. And we do this process for each of these highs or lows. And that's our searching algorithm that we use for finding the support and resistance zones. So this is what it does. Of course, we have some conditions that we have to be aware of. So the first one is this max equals min. So that basically means that because we are looping through all of the values, we will also loop through the same value. So like if we are looping for this value, then we go this, and then we check for the same value, which of course is going to be at the same price level. So if I let's just comment out this condition, and you will see that something happens, and that is that for each of these data points there is support and resistance, because of the reason I just said. So we have to use this condition, and the second condition is this is in, and this is in function is right here, and that's where this used times array comes. Okay, so there's this very simple Boolean function that takes one argument called time. So if you remember, I talked about how the time value is much more efficient in determining, like, okay, one more time, the time value is just far more precise, how to call it, identificator. Well, let's call it this way. So what we do right here is that if we find our support or resistance zone, which happens right here, so we check the deviations, and if they are approximately close to together, then you can see that we are dynamically increasing the size of this use times array, and then we are assigning those time values for the high and for the two data points, let's say. So I will show you right here. I will just I just need something like this. Okay, so okay, I don't like this. I'll go with something else. 60. Okay, that's better. Okay, so what happens? Let's say that through the iteration, so through our searching algorithm for support and resistance zones, we find our zone. So right here we have our first data point, our second data point. I don't know which of these is our second data point, but one of these it is. And after we find it, we don't want to use these data points in any other searching. So for example, if there's a support zone right here, so this point with this point, we don't want to use this point anymore, because we have already found the zone for this point, and therefore it can't be used in another zones. And that's why I created the used times array in which I store all of the time values of the used data points. And then I check if I used the data point, so that's the condition right here. So if I use the data point that I'm working with, then I want to continue. Continue means that like I skip the rest of the code and I go to the next iteration. Okay, so this is our second condition. And if none of these conditions are true, so we are not dealing with the same values and we are not dealing with the value that we have already used, then we check for the deviation. And it's very simple, so we find our max and min value, so our high and low, and then we check if the maximum value minus the deviation points is lower than the minimum value, and the minimum value plus the deviation points is higher than maximum value, then we have our zone. After we have our zone, we assign value to the use times array, and then we create our rectangle, and that's it. So that's our code for this indicator. As I said, it's very simple because yeah, I would say that this indicator is pretty effective. And if you check the code, it's like 2 for loops or 3 for loops, and that's it. So it's like really not something terribly difficult to code. I'm just thinking about one thing that I maybe made mistake in, and that's like calculate. Okay, and I think that what we should do is that we should clean the use times array. Because yeah, like okay, so I will try this out, because if we don't clear this array, then as the move progresses forward and these okay, I think it should be done like this, but I will check it. I will check it right now. So I will go to the tester. I will find this for indicators. So this is my YouTube folder, support resistance, and let's see if this works. Okay, so this is our initial state. Then if I move forward, okay, what I will do is that I will change these so it runs Pixel, let's say 10, let's say 50, 100, okay. So let's see if this is going to be better. It runs really slowly because yeah, okay, I won't be able to test that. Yeah, but I would keep this line as here as well, because it will be able to find new zones like this. Okay, so that's all. As you can see, it still works, so feel free to use this code, or you can also change something in it if you don't anything right here. Just change it, try to enhance it in some way, and yeah, thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Bye.